Welcome to episode 7 of the CALS Report, your insider's guide to the ever-evolving world of college sports leadership. I'm Will Reese, co-founder of Next Level Sports and proud CALS director since 2011. This episode of the CALS Report is brought to you by Teamworks, the operating system for sports. Trusted by over 5,000 teams, Teamworks is the strategic partner helping college athletic departments navigate change, streamline operations, and deliver an exceptional student-athlete experience. Learn more at teamworks.com. In our big interview, Ryan Bradley sits down with two of the brightest minds of the business, Clemson AD Graham Neff and Mississippi State AD Zac Selmon, for a candid and timely conversation on leadership in a time of uncertainty. They reflect on their transitions into the AD chair, share insights on navigating institutional politics, and discuss everything from NIL and the House settlement to facility planning, decision-making, and their deep personal ties to CALS. It's real, relevant, and packed with wisdom for anyone looking to lead in college athletics. Then, in the Leadership Playbook, author and guest host Clay Scroggins, known for How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, facilitates a powerful dialogue with Grand Canyon's Jamie Boggs and North Texas's Jared Mosley. Together, they explore what it means to lead well from any seat, whether you're managing up, building trust with your president, or just trying to get better in the seat you're in. The conversation is full of practical advice, personal insight, and encouragement for emerging leaders. From the weight of leadership to the joy of service, Episode 7 offers a double dose of inspiration and tools to help you lead with clarity, character, and confidence. Coming up next, Ryan Bradley kicks off our big interview with Graham Neff and Zac Selmon right here on the CALS Report, where the conversation continues long after the event ends.
It's time now for the big interview here on the CALS Report podcast. I'm Ryan Bradley, and I'm very excited to be joined this month by two of my good friends, two longtime friends of CALS, the Director of Athletics at Clemson University, Graham Neff, and the Director of Athletics at Mississippi State University, Zac Selmon. Gentlemen, it's a really busy time of year. Crossover season, as we say in the industry. March Madness is upon us. Lots going on. All that to say, thank you guys for making time to be with us. Looking forward to this conversation. How are things on your campuses this time of year?
I'll go. It's great, Ryan. Thanks for having me. And you pairing Zac and I is, I don't know what the next 45 minutes entail, but I hope it's compelling chat. Zac and I go way back personally, let alone with CALS and Ryan, to your point. So looking forward to this session. A lot going on, as you said.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Always good to be with my dear friend, Graham. That's one of the things that's always so special about this business is the relationships. I know having guys like both of you in my life have always enriched it. So I'm looking forward to the chat.
Looking forward to learning from both of you. You both have taken over major athletic departments in the last few years. What have been some of the biggest surprises for you moving from a deputy role into that AD chair for the first time? Graham, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks. Certainly, and Zac and I will have different stories to this, given mine was an internal hire. I've been at Clemson now 13 years, and when I had the opportunity to literally move the one office over, that was my office right there, and working with D-Rad, with Dan Radakovich for 9 years prior to this role. And that's one of the things, and even playing off of the intros, Zac and I and others kind of in our deputy circle. And now over the years, it's really cool to have our roles ascribed to, a different office, so to speak, and in different schools. Of course, that happens in our industry. So it's just the lineage in the industry is one of my favorite things about it, and how that parlays relationships. All that to be said, for me, the internal hire, something I like to talk about. Or share experience, because it was something that is unique. In our industry, there's trends of internal hires, external, right? Like we can all track that and have sense of that. One of the things that I think I underestimated on this internal transition and internal hire, having been here for 9 years, as I said, and in various roles. I came in 2013. I came to Clemson in 2013 as the CFO, as a finance guy. Right, and responsibilities change and grow, and ultimately was in a pretty comprehensive deputy role. And then, Dan leaves for Miami, great opportunity with him. He and I still talk, if not every week, multiple times a week, for better or worse. He's got a lot of thoughts on how things still roll at Clemson in a good way. I underestimated that stickiness of the prior roles transition, both as I look in the mirror. My background's in finance and engineering, and I'm kind of an in the weeds, a detail guy. And right as you progress in different roles, and particularly this role, it's just harder and harder. And so for myself to pull myself out of those weeds, at a place, again, internal hire that I had been for 9 years prior, so had a lot of that history and recent knowledge and in the weeds and intricacies of kind of running our business, our athletics department. So to be able to have to pull myself out of those weeds was, against probably what my bones are, so to speak. But then also conversely is the rest of the department, rest of the staff, quite frankly, the key relationships across campus that I would interface with and have, be at a depth of discussion or decision in a very different manner as a deputy type role versus this role. And so my quick story to finalize my point is Gary Wade is our kind of head facilities guy. Awesome attitude. We all have them on campus and they're kind of, a little bit of muscle and kind of make everything work. And for the prior 9 years, Gary would swing up if we were ever doing a renovation, a locker room renovation, whatever, and he'd show me the carpet tiles, right? Because it's carpet tiles and, hey, does this make sense? Does this look good? Great. And I'd give a thumbs up, what have you. That was the role. So like 2 months into this new role, I'm in the next office over and we're renovating the baseball locker room. And early one morning, Gary's an early person, knocks on the door and has the carpet tile. And it was just one of those that it kind of like dawned on me. I was like, well, gosh, yeah, for Gary, he's been doing that for 9 years. Graham's still here. So like, yeah, we're going to keep doing that. And so how I had to call it reset, certainly rehired and refilled my prior role, but just the flow of decision-making and depth for the health of the department, let alone for time awareness and utility for me, was something that I underestimated that stickiness, call it. So maybe a long-winded and storied example of underestimated, but again, on behalf of the department, was necessary to define the role change, so to speak.
Coming in for me was a little different. I've been at Mississippi State now just over 2 years, and before we accepted this job, I had never stepped foot in Starkville, Mississippi. And so for us, at that time, unfortunately, Coach Leach had just passed away. So we came in about 2 months after Coach Leach had passed. And then my wife and I, we've got 2 young daughters. So they're 14 and 10 now. But at the time, it's, okay, you're uprooting your family. When our youngest was in elementary school and our oldest was in middle school. So you first start with just, okay, getting to know the place. And we did a couple initial Zoom calls with the entire athletics department. So like the principles, the pillars of what you want to build upon. But a little different than Graham's path was, I didn't know anybody from here. So it's first of just trying the basic things that you might need, the relationships you need on campus, where do you live, all of those things. So that just takes time. And I think it's probably taken me just over a year when I got here to really feel comfortable about, okay, who are the key players on campus? I'm a relational person. And I came up in the fundraising side of the business. So I wanted to make all the relationships I could with donors, clearly our coaches, all of it. And then I think one of the things you do have to realize is there's a huge difference between recommendations and decisions. And my dad's a philosophy major. Growing up, he always said a bunch of stuff that I had no clue what he meant at the time. It was way over my head. But he was always talking about training your mind and the mental fatigue that comes with it, just because there's a different weight of responsibility when you're ultimately responsible, not only like the fun stuff, the games, the competitions, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with these roles. And I think that you feel the weight on it. But it's been an unbelievable transition for us. We've got a great team of people here. I couldn't ask for it any other way. And I know how much I've grown, but I think the preparation and Graham's been able to work with some great people. I've been able to work with some great people and learn from some great mentors that really helped prepare me to run a department.
Dewey Selmon, the philosophy major, that explains a lot. I did not know that.
Ancient philosophy, man. It's unbelievable. He'll give you lectures. So we never got spankings growing up. We got lectures, and I would much rather have a spanking.
I feel that. I want to ask you both more about just some of the pros and cons of that transition. Graham, yours on the internal side, as you've had a chance to reflect a few years in now. what were some of the built-in advantages of being the guy that was promoted from within, and maybe some of the things that you felt like were more challenging as an internal guy who everybody already knew?
Yeah, certainly, the learning curve and contra to Zac's point of didn't know anybody, I feel like you knew, not that I knew everybody, but like had those relationships, knew how to navigate things needed throughout campus. We have a local, our state of South Carolina, we have a local board. So certainly our trustee relationships from a governance standpoint, President Clemens, I worked with for 9 years. And so just like that the built-in relationships that it changes, again, different role. So maybe not the fundamentals of the relationship, but like the sphere of discussion and things like that is innately different. So the learning curve of that was really, really flat, which is certainly a huge advantage. Disadvantages, like a little bit playing off of my prior point of underestimating just kind of the circles of where I needed to spend my time. Advantages of that, knowing the history and things like that. But like, I think that stacks a lot of the time. And it's not like that I want to now cold turkey and remove myself from a project, or, hey, now the org chart's a little different, and so I need to delegate that relationship. Well, I've met with whomever for 9 years, and now, it's not like you want to come across of, hey, I don't have time for that, but you got to manage, the calendar differently and time differently. I think certainly for Zac and I, about our timing of coming into these roles is when NIL, transfer portal, world's kind of changing. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, Ryan, but like, so there was some coinciding of that, which made things very different as far as we saw our predecessors, Zac with Joe C at Oklahoma, me with Dan, here at Clemson, and how they prioritized their time and prioritized things or tasks, and then where they delegated. Well, our coming into these roles coincided with, gosh, those priorities for ADs really, really changing. So there was a little bit of, gosh, I'd seen how Dan had done it before for 9 years, and gosh, that just it kind of was very naturally having to change, and so had to kind of rewrite how to go about the job from an industry level, let alone for a first time in these roles.
And Zac, as an outsider, flipping that question a little bit, what were, in addition to getting your family there and getting to know everybody and just getting the lay of the land, what were some of the things that you saw as particularly challenging about being an outsider to a place, and where did you see an opportunity to look at things with fresh eyes and put your own stamp on things at Mississippi State?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things about college campuses and then also athletics departments is people that work in athletics departments, especially at this level, take so much great pride. And it usually hits a different level, whether they went to the institution, they had a family member, they were just grew up in the area. So I think anytime you're a quote unquote outsider, it's coming in with, hey, I'm just here to help. And how can we make our institution, Mississippi State University, better? And I think that's something I learned, working at the University of North Carolina, going there, of just saying, like, I'm here to help. I didn't go to school at UNC, but I'm here to help make UNC better. So I think first and foremost, it's just the commonality of how do you gain respect, trust, all of those things that take time. And then from there, I think an advantage is you come in with eyes wide open. I think it's critical, though, that you always remember that you're at a place, you chose to come here for a reason. For me, I chose to come to Mississippi State because we've got a great president, Dr. Mark Keatum. I got to learn more about the community and really fell in love with a lot of the tenets that we have. So then you're here for a reason, and you want to make sure that you continue just to do everything that you can to add value to the community, to the institution. And as Graham mentioned, we came in these roles right as and Graham took over at Clemson a little bit before I did at Mississippi State. But there's so many things that are changing. So you also almost have to speed date some of the concepts, because historically things would take a little bit longer. Now we're making decisions on so many changes in a short period of time, where I think ideally you'd have longer organic or longer runway to build relationships, to do some of the things. But we're, again, because of things outside of our control, we're making decisions in a much more condensed framework. But coming in from an outside perspective, it's been, again, a learning experience for me, but it's something that's been very fruitful as well.
We're going to get into some of the hard stuff that's going on in college athletics a little bit later, but I want to stop here and talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that you all have rolled out recently. Graham, we'll start with the new Clemson Ventures revenue generation strategy. This appears to be another example of Clemson doing things in-house that a lot of athletic departments across the industry have outsourced over time traditionally. Tell us about what Clemson Ventures entails, and why is this the best model for Clemson?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's well, first of all, what it is, it's at its core, it's multimedia rights, and we've been operating with that in-house for a couple of years now, 3 years, under the banner or a brand of CAPCO, Clemson Athletic Properties. Clemson Ventures is not just a rebrand of that; it's that at its core, but have also looked to reorganize, so to speak, all of our external and revenue generating units within Clemson Ventures, which is structured as a affiliated organization of Clemson. So it is in-house, so to speak, your question, but it's also it's a separate 501c3. It has separate governance to it, and therefore some flexibility, so to speak, in an appropriate way, financially, HR, contractual, etc. So for us, it's really this alignment of revenue generating entities outside of philanthropy, right? So we have IPTE, which is an incredibly strong brand, 91st year here at Clemson, which is philanthropy, our philanthropic revenue generating entity. And Clemson Ventures is commercial. So again, at its core, sales and sponsorships, great. But we've also looked to move our other commercial revenue activities therein of merchandising, IP. I'm pointing to my tiger paws on here somewhere. So how we, our licensing, marketing functions with that we have Clemson Plus, which is our direct-to-consumer app. Think Netflix, Disney Plus, big thing in the Neff household. And so how we would have to monetize and storytell all of our content creation, live events, production studios, etc. Therein, certainly ticketing is from a structure standpoint, we have that, call it quasi in there, but the expertise around data analytics and ticketing would be under that umbrella as well. And now, right, and certainly part of the strategy over the past 6 months has been from a NIL and right as we're enacting house cases, we anticipate fair market value, call it range of compensation, our ability to facilitate and kind of act as an agency. So have that strategy and staff under Clemson Ventures as well, right? That inherently is all tied together. I think we can all understand. Obviously, it comes down to people and structure and how that looks. So we've taken the initiative to put all those people and the structure and align that all in one uniform aligned manner. And so, there is the actual management of this company, of this entity, Clemson Ventures, but also the anticipated and expected, call it synergy. I know that's a buzzword of how we present in a really organized manner of responsibility to generate revenues. And now, right, as we look to present and connect deals for our student athletes, which is obviously an incredible competitive focus that we all have. And so, I hope some of that really hits home as it relates to what Clemson Ventures is and the why. But at the end of the day, you're right, Ryan. Like, it is an in-house entity. I know it's innovative in nature. One of our department core values. I've certainly got a lot of inbound calls on it. Zach and I have talked on it a good amount as everyone's trying to explore what the next iteration is. And I don't want it just to come across of, oh yeah, it's how the professional franchise is doing it, so we're doing it, right? It's not that. That's not the why or was not the trigger. But we have spent a lot of time learning from, professional sports, and this is a lot of what they entail. So we've hired leadership for Clemson Ventures that has professional sports background, and look to continue to probably populate that with that type of lens, because right as college athletics continues to grow and we look to more professionalize at least our revenue generating functions, that's our mindset with Clemson Ventures. Has a lot of utility to grow the revenues for Clemson athletics, but also, again, to present and connect NIL opportunities for our student athletes, which is incredibly important. So I hope some of that connected and made sense. That's what Clemson Ventures is, and it certainly connects with, I think, how we like to think a little differently here at Clemson. Yeah,
that's great insight. And I think as college athletics continues to evolve and you start there's so much adding to, the portfolio, it's easy for those silos to get built up organically. And so bringing all that under one umbrella, trying to streamline it and get all of those utilities working together, I think is really innovative, and we look forward to seeing how that continues to progress. Zach, on your side, I know you recently rolled out a new master plan for the athletic department there. So 2 years in, I'm sure that was a long tail project. Talk to us about that process and what you're excited about as you've now got that out in the wild and people are reacting to the vision that you've cast for the future of your athletic department and its facilities.
Yeah, really excited about it, Ryan, and just big testament to our team's hard work. You've got so many people internally within the athletics department and across campus, and clearly our partners with HOK. But again, coming up on the fundraising side, I always remember wanting to make sure that when we're asking people for financial support, we've got a clear vision of where we want to go and making sure we're the best. We're as responsible as possible and we're best stewards of their resources. And so when we got here, we assessed everything that we were doing, and the bones of a lot of our facilities are really good. And I know there's different schools of thought with the necessity of high quality facilities and also high quality NIL offerings as we're getting ready for rev share, whatever it is. But for us, we thought we've got to have a long-term vision to make sure that we put Mississippi State University, specifically athletics, at the top of the map as far as facilities. And so we assessed all of the facilities and laid out a pretty bold plan that we're excited about. We've already tackled a couple of projects at our basketball program last year. And then right now our number one project is indoor football practice facility, which we've got great donor support from right now, and just really excited about, again, taking something from an idea to now taking things to market. And then I know once we get everything finalized, it'll just be a really good situation for all of us. So again, really excited about it, but it's amazing how much work goes into it, Ryan. And then now it's just the start. And I think anybody in this business knows if you don't have a vision to go talk to people about your stakeholders, you're not going to be able to do anything. So for us, it's all about the fan experience. How do we take young men, young women, and get them to the next ability athletically that they can be? So we want to be a developmental program. So everything that we're doing kind of falls within the same tenets of how do you have an elite fan experience, but also how do you develop athletes at the top of the game?
That's exciting. Absolutely.
Speaks to relationships. And so, right, Zach, you've been obviously a handful of different places, but you guys have been around too. And so, Zach, I don't know if I've told you this, when we were designing or at least getting concepts for our football facility, our football operations facility that we built in 2017, we flew around a couple of places, including the SEAL complex down at Mississippi State, right? Which at that time was like one of the very first, it's been over a decade now, right? And so one of the very first kind of like created and organized football operations complex. So we went down there to see our, as an idea. We kind of flew architects and donors down, some staff to see that and a couple others. And then fast forward 4 or 5 years, Zach, when you were at Oklahoma with Joe C. and some staff, you guys flew to see our facility here at Clemson, which I'm sure, right, you're taking some of those thoughts to your facility plans there, football or otherwise. So anyway, there's some full circles to some of that, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right, switching gears a little bit here and into the weeds a little bit further. Graham, I think this was in the ticker recently, but you are playing an active role on the transition team shaping the new governance model for Division I. So first, congratulations on that. What has that? Yes, CALS Implementation Committee. Tell us what that process has been like, and what makes you optimistic that this model is built to address many of the enforcement issues that have plagued the NCAA for a number of years?
Yeah, listen, certainly pleasure to serve. It's been a lot of time. Right, the group was kind of formed Thanksgiving time and really started to get going in December and have been in earnest in December and certainly this whole calendar year. So I know that the names of our colleagues is out there, and it's been really it's fascinating to see, really led by the general counsels of the Power 5 conferences, the A5 conferences, who were the defendants in the House suit, and ultimately interface up through the commissioners. That being said, it's right. A lot of time we're organized into subgroups and committees. Again, I know some of this has been articulated out there. Even so much so that we've had to change our senior staff meeting cadence to move that here internally at Clemson in order to accommodate some of the committed kind of weekly times with it. All that to be said, of the 4 entities or ways we've organized, subgroups that we've organized of cap revenue share, cap reporting, clearing NIL clearinghouse, which is the subgroup, so to speak, that I spend the most time with, rules, and then enforcement and investigation. Your question kind of led into the enforcement investigation piece, right? All this is going to be new, right? This is the fundamentals of the change of the industry mechanics, and ultimately, a lot of it's been really interesting to see the balance or the tether while having the separate leadership of the A5 conferences. And so while the formation of an entity to enforce rules, ultimately affirm rules, and investigate, outside of the umbrella of the NCAA, but Charlie Baker and the NCAA's, role within it has existed in a positive, healthy way. So it's not like a A5, take our ball and set up our own shop over here. It's not that. But there's ultimately a lot of recognition that, right, the House case and the defendants is really defining this separate A4 unit, and the need to do things a little differently, right, from an enforcement and investigative side of things. I think that's where, as the communication continues to roll out, there's a lot of call it confidence or intrigue that, hey, that's going to be done differently in a differently efficient manner and focus and rules and regulations and things like that. So I think how that's continued to take shape has been important. We're right at this precipice. We're talking here in early spring of balancing the work that's been done with the external, the rollout of it, call it the communications internal, meaning to ADs and coaches and presidents in our leagues, and then ultimately the public facing component to try to build and instill some confidence while the airplane's being built, so to speak. So listen, we're all pointing towards April, towards the settlement being heard by Wilkin, and hopefully some adoption of that, and then ultimately the implementation. So exactly the continuity of this committee, so to speak, I think we're all curious of how long that's going to keep going. Ultimately, once we get things built, so to speak, and rolled out. But it's been a lot of focus, and the inside baseball of it's been really, I think, helpful and important for myself and sure Clemson, but ultimately trying to take the Clemson hat off on behalf of the ACC for us, and ultimately the A4 for the rest of the country.
Zach, you're not part of that transition team, that working group, but I know you're much more than a casual observer. So what has what have you kept your eye on, and what are you looking towards in terms of what you're communicating back to your staff and your coaches as you're getting updates from this group?
Yeah, within the SEC, we've got Trev Alberts and then Mitch Barnhart on the committee, and they've done a fantastic job just with flow of communication, big picture items that everybody needs to be aware of. And now as we're approaching different deadlines or key milestone dates, if you will, just to be as prepared as we can here locally. And that's one of the things that has been so good about our conference, about the SEC, is they've just been fantastic with communication. And I know from our standpoint, it does allow us, it's always, as a leader, it's always a little uncomfortable when you're trying to plan and trying to lead in the unknown. And Graham mentioned it, putting the plane together as you're flying it. There's a lot of changes outside of our control, but it does give you comfort to know we've got great minds in our industry that are rooted in the right things, rooted in what's best for higher education, rooted in what's best for student athletes. And so I know we locally take a lot from getting Trev and Mitch and really help us activate some of our internal planning.
You both use the airplane metaphor, so I want to build on that a little bit. How do you approach decision making when you're in such a volatile environment? The information is changing on almost a daily basis. It seems like the goalposts are moving on a regular basis, and you've got to communicate a strong vision, a clear vision, but also a nimble vision to your team, to your coaches, to your fan base in the midst of all of this rapid change. How challenging is that, and how do you approach that when you need to nail down decisions in order to give your team the go forward? Zach, we'll start with you.
Yeah, coming up in the business, in both of gentlemen I had the pleasure to work for, and Bubba Cunningham and Joe C, were huge on just core values. And maybe early on in my career, I didn't put as much stock in that. And so, for us here at Mississippi State, it's state of mind. So serve, together, act, transform, and excel. So everything that we do, all the decisions are made based upon our core value system. And I think now that, again, gives you a lot of comfort knowing a lot of times you're not going to bat 1,000. But over time, if you could hit better decisions and then also learn from the decisions that we make. I've got 4 great deputy ADs on our staff that make unbelievable decisions all the time. And I think it's just clear lines of communication. Who has the ability to own which decision, what decisions do I need to make versus which decisions that people on our staff and our team need to make. And that's something that I think we're open with it and have constant dialogue and feedback of just trying to get better with it. No different than what we're asking our student athletes to do every day of getting better. I think that's the same onus of how can we sharpen our decision-making skills throughout the process.
Graham, what's decision-making look like for you in this environment?
Yeah, kind of one of my favorite phrases that the department would, some of the staff would smirk when I say it here, because I use it so often, is in the absence of certainty, provide clarity. And it's so absence of certainty. There's nothing certain about exactly how House is going to implement it, or what does it look like on July 2nd, or what is the litigation work, right? We're not certain, but clarity. Here's where we're at. And reserve the right to come back next week because the goalpost may move. Your point of your question, Ryan. And so, and I'll say that, and it's interesting as it relates to preparation towards these jobs that Zach and I are in now. We were talking at the beginning of the conversation in deputy roles. We all learned a bunch. Every industry changed, et cetera, from during COVID. Certainly, college athletics had a lot of change and had to be nimble more than ever during that time period. And so I think back to some of the balance and the staffing and the decision making at Clemson. Dan would have to be significantly interfacing at the conference level and the campus level and national level on those type of things. And so he had tasked some of us from a staff standpoint to have significant and really, really frequent interface with our head coaches and maybe senior staff and at times, right, our whole department, Zoom or otherwise. We're all remote and at various times. My point is, so just found during that time a lot of what we carried forward now of there's not much certainty here, but clarity. Here's where we're at. Frequent touch points. So it's not like we're having staff or head coaches meeting once a week on House case, maybe like we did during the heights of COVID uncertainty. But just found that to be and lean on that now of just high touch points, high transparency, i.e. the clarity. And in order to, acquiesce on the certainty that none of us really have. So that's been the watchword. And I think our behaviors, I hope, kind of follow that mindset a little bit.
And speaking of that clarity, recently in the headlines, it's been documented that litigation between Clemson and Florida State and the ACC appears to be settled now. I'm sure that gives you some sense of clarity as well for your staff and your student athletes, coaches, et cetera. How is it helpful to have that behind you, and what does that allow you to do in terms of providing more clarity and direction to your staff moving forward?
Well, you guys smirking at my exhale, whether that was intentional or not, but it was probably literal in a lot of regards. Listen, happy to talk on it, Ryan. Really, really pleased for all involved. Right. And as an aside, I would tell you between not only the House case, which has a lot of, it's a legal settlement. So there's a lot of, legal understandings or limitations or opportunities within it. Certainly our litigation with the ACC, there's a lot of lawyers. So I didn't go to law school, but I've told our general counsel, I think I can audit a few specialty classes and sit for the dang bar and give it a go. Just with how much we've all interfaced with on the legal side so much. To your question at hand, a strong ACC is good for Clemson, and a strong Clemson is good for the ACC. So I don't mean to be totally PR'd with you, Ryan, even though that's certainly your background. But that's certainly been a mindset that we've had, and ultimately kind of led to what we think is a really positive settlement for Clemson, sure, but also for the ACC. And yeah, the changes of the financial distribution. One of the things that was important with it for Commissioner Phillips and the ACC and the presidents that how we understand it is that there's no hard
coded dollars for Clemson or for Florida State or for any member of the league. It's all earnable, up or down, based on ultimately on the field performance or on the field performance, which ultimately has a lot of linearity with TV viewership, et cetera, which, as so much of the big business of college athletics, continues to be buoyed by media contracts and viewership and television dollars. Like, there's a lot of understandable connectivity with financial distribution to membership and how you provide value from a viewership standpoint to the league. So there's the financial component to it. Certainly the nimbleness around the continued to changing tectonic plates within our industry, with all kinds of what does the future look like, right? And I won't go down rabbit trails with that, other than to say that, gosh, there's been the rate of change in how our industry works, let alone how the industry is structured, so much over the first half of this decade, and we can all anticipate over the second half of this decade to be prepared for that flexibility and nimbleness. And that's a lot of what Zach and I's jobs are, to look out for our institutions and to have our hats on while being, again, at Clemson has been incredibly important for us, all the way up the food chain, governance, president, of course, coaches. We talk a lot about being great members of the conference we're in, and being having a great ACC is really important part of that. It's just how we view, what our job is as members of the conference, and feel like this settlement allows for us to now double down on the forwardness for the ACC and all members. So, Commissioner Phillips was first class the entire way, as expected, just knowing Jim, and he really compartmentalized. And we tried to mirror the compartmentalized, right? The litigation and membership dispute, not easy. Don't mean to take it lightly. While also, student athletes that, it's not their decisions. They need to be unaffected by it, and officials and all those type of things that over the year of which we had an outstanding litigation, couldn't have felt as more supported from the ACC as a member. So very excited to have the exhale of having a good settlement towards it. And now for us to continue to do our part and be great at Clemson and how that supports the ACC for sure.
I appreciate your candor in answering that question, to say the least. We could sit here and talk about the persistent issues in college athletics all day long, but I really want to pivot to some of the more positive emerging trends. Zach, what is one area where you think college athletics is headed in the right direction right now?
For me, Ryan, it's always about like the education and opportunities that college athletics provides, and that will never change. I get there's a lot of challenges, and we've heard a lot of people, whether it's complain about obstacles we have, but for us, we came off 2 back-to-back semesters with our football team having a cum GPA of above a 3.0, and we're taking the majority of our kids from the state of Mississippi. And to go from where they're coming from to now have access to education. My dad was a first-gen college graduate because of the game of football. So that's just, a lifelong mission for me. And all my sisters were able to go to school because of college basketball. I was able to go to Wake Forest because of a football scholarship. So I understand the economics have changed, and those are some of the things that we're trying to solve for, whether it's through house, locally within our conferences, what we're doing. But the core of what we're doing is still really good. And that's something that always drives me when you see, again, we understand what transfers are doing, but we also understand graduation rates are going up too. And understanding that education sometimes looks different. One of my little sisters, my parents adopted, is now working for Starbucks, and she's getting her online education. She comes from West Africa. Now it has opportunities for her because of innovation and technology to go get a degree. And so I think it's just having the mindset of sometimes it's uncomfortable, the changes of what we're doing, and a lot of things have changed. But the positives of what we do, you ask Graham walk around Clemson today, he's going to have a great group of student athletes that have unbelievable stories. The same when you walk around Starkville, the stories that you hear from kids from literally all over the world, whether they're top in the class. We just had a young man win the heptathlon national champion that's been working his tail off. Never thought he was going to be able to get it done and was able to get it done. Or the number 1 female golfer in the world, Julia Lopez Ramirez from Spain last year. Hearing stories like that, you mix that with education, like that's one of the things that drives me, is that we're continuing to do great things, and you see it on the faces of our student athletes.
Really good. Graham, what?
That, yeah, real quick. Well, I want to ask Zach if he helped or hurt the Wake Forest average team GPA, but I think we can. I got a good sense of the answer to that one.
He was weighted.
The economic piece Zach referenced, and there's a lot being written, and we're all adapting to the scholarship. I'm playing off of the educational value that Zach was hitting on, but even the economic educational value of scholarships, right? And roster size reduced really hard. That's been a hard thing for many, affected many, but ultimately the scholarship limit or the scholarship deregulation, scholarship limits being increased, like the good of that. And we talk in particular for our Olympic sports. And again, the economics, who knows how this is all playing out? We're all figuring out sports sponsorships and things like that. So I'm not saying this is all down the fairway, other than at Clemson, we're adding 150 scholarships. We're going from 275 to 425. And at the end of the day, a lot of those are making their way, the high majority of those, to our Olympic sports. And that historically, your heptathlon national champion, gosh, like maybe he or she was on a full, but likely maybe not. And then you get into the opportunity to open the door for education for a lot of our student athletes heretofore, where the economics of that has been really hard because they're on partials, and baseball's got 11.7, and gosh, like how that there's a lot of stories, a lot written that we've read on African-American populations in professional baseball. And well, a lot of that is because there's a linchpin around college scholarship opportunity, or maybe lack thereof, for college baseball and the cost of baseball. But now, gosh, if there's opportunity for a lot more scholarships in college baseball, how that maybe is going to affect youth baseball. I'm on a baseball path, but we can extrapolate this to a lot of the Olympic sports, how that may affect youth or high school baseball, which leads to collegiate baseball, which leads to professional baseball. And so I think the demographics and the economics of that is going to take, a generation to play out, but like we can forecast a lot of good for that while we're trying to navigate the broader economics and rosters and things like that, which is not easy as well. So the educational piece, tying the economic financial piece to it, gosh, Ryan, I think there's a lot of good for the change that's at hand for it.
That's good stuff. All right, we've just got a few minutes left, and I'd be remiss if we didn't take a trip down memory lane. As I mentioned at the top of our conversation, I've had the good fortune of knowing you both for a really long time and watching your careers progress, and it's been amazing to see what you both accomplished. Our friendships, in large part, were formed due to our mutual engagement with CALS and with Will Reese. So I'd love to hear from you both talking about CALS and Will and what that event and organization has meant to you on a personal and professional level over the years.
Yep. Well, for me, I always refer to Will. It's Forrest's son. Forrest is the real MVP of the family. I got to know Will back at Norman High School when he was a basketball coach. I've known Will for a long time. And, coming into the business, you don't know what you don't know, but you do figure out really quickly it's about building relationships and meaningful relationships. You're not going to have great relationships with everybody, but, getting to know you, Ryan, and clicking with Graham right away, and kind of our cohort of people in the industry coming up just made it natural. Like there's challenges everywhere, every role, whether you're starting off or you're an executive style role, there's a lot of challenges. So have like-minded people that you could bounce things off of, the good stuff and the challenging stuff. And I look at it more so it's so much deeper than just colleagues. I consider Graham not only just in our business, a dear friend, know his family well, and vice versa. So I think that's one of the things that CALS really allows for, is you get to know people, you get to learn, you get to grow, all those things. But everything that we do is about people. And that's one of the things I've always loved about CALS.
Well, and Will, how he structures the culture of CALS really, facilitates that. The family feel, the invite kind of only, or like the referral process to be able to come to CALS, so to speak. And now, gosh, what, Ryan, 15 years? What CALS, is it 15 plus or minus? And so, so that's really, it's taken on a life of its own, like in a great way, and how it's continued to mature. And then I do, and I will plug, even though Will didn't suggest, but I'll plug and encourage, right, the CALS 360s or the CALS 1 days, this podcast, which I'm sure dozens are going to watch because, Zach and I are the headlines. Those are all like little deposits of like more of the relational connectivity and getting to know somebody just in a different manner than, the NACTA 5 days, which is great, right? We're all NACTA and we've all come up that way too. But like the complement of CALS in a really different cultural, relational way, it's kind of, it when you see it kind of thing. And that's something that you talk about, but just the encouragement to come to know it and see it, because it is so different and such a complement to a lot of the different opportunities that we do have within the industry.
And now we've got another generation, maybe 2 generations behind us, coming up behind you guys. And so before we let you go, I would love for you to leave our CALS audience, those emerging and aspiring athletic administrators, with a piece of advice. If you had one piece of advice that you would have given yourself early in your career, or that you would give an aspiring athletic administrator who maybe wants to sit in a seat like yours someday, something to hold on to, what would it be?
For me, it'd be just run your race. We live in a world of comparisons. Patience isn't always there. We want this, but you can't shortcut your path to whatever that path may lead. Your path towards success is based upon what you do daily, and just enjoy every part of the journey. There's growth in the challenge. There's growth in stretching, but never put too much arbitrary timelines on what your career should look like. If you get better every day and are a student of the game and grounded to do it for the right reasons, I think that's one of the biggest things is just be grounded for whatever you're called to do in college athletics. For me, it's continuing to provide education and opportunity for young people. So whenever the winds will blow different ways, headwinds, tailwinds, whatever it might be, you're grounded in what you want to do. And then have fun with it. We're here because we get to change lives. It's challenging, but it's so much fun when you just do it the right way and do it because you love what you're doing.
That last part is we've had to continue to remind ourselves, right? Because industry's hard and working and uncertainty, and so no question that last piece. I'll take a more even more functional maybe lens to it, and I remember this distinctly when I was a student manager at Georgia Tech, and Radakovich was the AD, and I, was trying to figure it out, had some aspirations. I'm a huge believer in osmosis and just like raising a room or finding a reason to be in the room. Obviously there's chain of command and appropriateness and all that, but like so much of what you can learn by listening, just because if you're in the right audience or tag along or shoot, you raise your hand to do something little to, offer for the group that gets you in the room, and then A to B to C happens. So, it's one of those of like doing the work, raising your hand to, I'll take that, or let me take a swing at that spreadsheet. I don't know. I love a good spreadsheet or a good whiteboard. So, that something compelling, something bringing value to get you in the room. And then, you never know where things snowball from there, so to speak. And Zach has stories and I have stories of that. And so that aspirational component of just bringing value to get you in the room where it happens, Hamilton reference, I think is a huge part of how things continue to grow. So Ryan, this has been great. 45 minutes with my buddy Zach is always a pleasure. So thanks for having us.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Zach.
Isn't it amazing though? I'm terrible at Excel, engineering wizard. I was a religion major. So there's no clear path. Just run your own race. And that's the beauty of college athletics. It's so many different backgrounds that can come together.
Yeah, and a son of an expert in ancient philosophy we learned today. So if nothing else, that's a great takeaway, Zach. Hey, I appreciate you both. I'm proud of both of you. It's been awesome to see you all evolve from some of the rooms we were in 10 or 15 years ago to the rooms that you all are leading in today. So really awesome just to see you guys as leaders in the industry and mentors to many. And I know our CALS audience is going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. So again, thanks for making the time. And good luck to both of you and your teams the rest of the spring.
Thanks, Ryan.
See y'all.
Well, welcome back to the Leadership Playbook. Really excited today to get to welcome Jamie Boggs and Jared Mosley. Before I introduce or allow them to introduce themselves, let me just introduce myself. My name's Clay Scroggins. I have been friends with the CALS crew for the last couple of years, and I've written some books on leadership. Get the opportunity to speak on those books a lot, and they asked me to step in because of the context of this conversation today. I wrote a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. They said, hey, would you mind facilitating this interview with Jamie Boggs and Jared Mosley about that topic? I said, I would be delighted. Longtime listener, maybe second-time caller for me. But Jamie, let's start with you. Grand Canyon, we're in the middle of March Madness. You guys were in it. You got bounced, but last year had a fantastic run. I know there's way more to your life than just that. So tell us a little about you and what you do in the role you're in.
Well, that's been my primary life for the past 2 weeks. But currently vice president of athletics at GCU. Been here for, I can't believe it, 10 years now. Before this, I was at Georgia State for just a short period, 3 years. Had a great experience there, working for Cheryl Levick, learning a lot. And before that, I was at Duke, where I got my start in college athletics for 7 years. Spent a little bit of time in a sports agency, a little bit of time in pro sports. Seems like we're moving that direction anyway. So who knew that was going to matter now? I've been in college athletics for over 20 years now.
Did I see you have a law degree?
I do. Yes. Yes. When I was graduating from college, my parents gave me 3 options. They're like, you can go to medical school, law school, or you can get your PhD. So those 2 require science too much. Go to law school. So yes, I do have a law degree.
I'm curious to hear more about that. But before we dive back into that, Jared, let's give you a chance to say hello and introduce yourself. Jared Mosley, North Texas, up in Denton.
Lovely Denton, suburb of DFW, and have been here in North Texas. Man, it's been 8.5 years. The last 2.5 as athletic director. Had an opportunity when Ren Baker came on board to jump back into college athletics, because previously I was spent a couple of years as the president and CEO at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame in Waco. And then prior to that, got my start at my alma mater, Abilene Christian University, and was a basketball student athlete there. Spent a little bit of time overseas playing basketball. And then when I came back to finish a degree and jump into the real world, started as a graduate assistant in basketball, and quickly was able to navigate my path in athletic administration. And so spent my last 10 years at Abilene Christian as the athletic director.
Well, the context of this conversation today is how have you all learned how to lead even though you're not always in charge? And I know both of you have a little bit different backgrounds, but Jamie, you spent a little bit of time as an associate, both at Duke and at Georgia State, and then took the job as the AD. Jared, you had an experience as an AD before this AD role, but let's just start with that. What's the challenge that people face when they go from being an associate to being the athletic director or the VP of athletics?
I think I would, I tell people all the time, like, in just the weight of leadership of being in the role is probably the biggest adjustment. I think just Jamie and I both probably in our times is, coming up in the business, and as you grow into new opportunities and you become, a number 2 somewhere, you're still making a lot of those decisions that an athletic director gets to, or you're in the room and getting to be a part of those conversations. But the temperature definitely changes whenever you're in that chair having to be the one, putting the wheels in motion and setting direction and vision. And, I think early in my career, having become an AD at 27, that was probably the greatest challenge of my life, because you've got to balance that. But then you're also working with coaches who definitely have way more experience and time at the institution than you do. And so, you really have to lean into, I think one of the things that I've tried to do just in my various positions is you want to lean into people who can really pour into you and help you learn, maybe not go through the hardship and pains of poor decisions, but to lean into experience and wisdom of people who've gone down the road before you. So certainly have had a great group of mentors and people that I've, in those situations where I probably wasn't quite ready to take on everything, they were there to provide support and encouragement.
I want to come back to that, Jared, that concept of being 27. I think a lot of people can relate to that. How do you lead people that are older than you, right? Or how do you lead someone that you're in a greater position of authority, but maybe they do have more experience or tenure? But before we get to that, Jamie, what about you? What was the maybe the surprise of going from the associate role to the VP of athletics role as you made that transition?
Yeah, I had a really good situation here in that our athletic director at the time, as Jared said, you do have a lot of already discretion in decision making, and you're in the room anyways. But I had a situation where we were moving so quickly as a university. We're very aggressive as a university. So our athletic director at the time really gave me a lot of discretion when it came to decision making and working directly with overseeing all the operations of the staff. So, from an internal standpoint, there wasn't much of a transition for me. The bigger transition was, okay, how do I get my president now? In the room, I'm in the room, and he knows me, but presidents aren't really caring about, not they're not caring, but they're not paying attention to, who's going to be your next compliance hire, how's your compliance manual going, things like that. They're paying attention to bigger picture things, and I wasn't as much involved in those things. So, for those bigger picture things that are on our plates, how do I get my president who's due to, to trust me and feel confident that I'm going to make the right decisions?
Well, we'll do the same. We'll put a pin in that one too, Jamie. But before we end this podcast, let's make that promise that anybody that's listening, we're going to tell you how to get your president to do everything you've ever wanted your president to do before this podcast is over. How about that?
I can't wait for Jamie's answer. Like we all need that. So.
Exactly. But Jamie, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. You mentioned that when you were in the associate role, you had a great situation. That was very humble, very kind the way you said it, because you gave all the credit to the person that you were working for. But I would assume you had done something, or you had led in such a way in the position that you were in that gave people the trust in you to go, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and give you some early practice on being an AD while you're still an associate. I know that's sometimes hard for us to comment on our own, what makes you so great, right? That's sometimes hard to answer, but what did you do? What were the secrets that you learned back then that allowed you to build that kind of trust where you had some early autonomy and some early authority to be able to make some of those decisions?
I think all of us in that second chair role, it's competence. I mean, you really just have to be very good and competent in your role and have the skill set. It just happened that GCU at the time was transitioning from Division II to Division I. And that was my niche from when I was at Georgia State. We transitioned from FCS to FBS. So I really already knew the entire process, what we had to go through, what we had to provide to the NCAA. I just had the skill set. So, Mike Vaught at the time, he just had confidence in the fact that I had the experience. He knew I knew what to do. I was competent in that role.
I think that's a great lesson to anybody younger, because I think a lot of times you might begrudge the situation you're in, roll your eyes or, oh my goodness, why am I having to learn about this thing that I don't know? I don't know that I'll ever use it again. A little bit like the way maybe kids handle, geometry or think about, chemistry. But the truth is, in career, you never know when you're going to get 10 years down the road and go, oh, now we're going through something that I've actually been through. Now I can dust that folder off and I'm now the expert, right? Jared, does anything like that in your situation come to mind, of a situation that you were in where you learned a skill as the number two that you didn't even realize was going to give you such expertise or build trust with other people?
I think for me, the opportunity, having been an athletic director fairly young, and then having that experience of 10 years and then a couple years outside and then Ren bringing me on board, to Jamie's point, I think you just always, the opportunities you have, regardless of how mundane it feels, what can I do to take pressure and just some of the day-to-day tasks off the plate of the athletic director? And so that I love that idea of competence. Like if you can execute at a high level and deliver on deadlines and keep things organized and structured and really simplify, the information coming across your boss's desk, like that's the goal of a number two, is how much headache can I filter away that doesn't have to ever get to them. And then when the things do get through, they're big enough that we all can, collaboratively work through that together. And so, I think that's one of the things, just having, a decade of that experience to just kind of draw back on. It kind of helps you anticipate a little bit too, what are the things that Ren's going to probably wish that I would just move forward and keep off his desk, and then understanding from him too. And this took Ren and I a little bit of time to know what are the things that he's passionate about and wants to have his hands in. Like I assumed some of that on the front end. So we quickly were able to, I tell people it's a funny story, but we were doing a facility renovation. I assumed like an AD does not want to be picking tile and colors and paint and design. Well, Ren, he pulled me aside on our first project. He was like, "Hey, I haven't got an update on where we are with this lobby renovation." He said, "What's happening?" I said, "Well, we're looking at doing this and this." He said, "Well, come down and walk me through it." And when I walked him through, he was like, "Yeah, that's not happening." He said, "I want to see." He said, he said, "Most people don't think that that's my thing, but I really like to design and I feel it's a gift of mine." So from then on, he was in the middle of picking the colors, picking the tile, picking the carpet. And so like, I think that's one of the things early just in trying to step into that role is you need to know pretty quickly. Don't just assume the things that you wouldn't want to deal with, your boss doesn't, and figure out, how you can, again, simplify the relationship to a point where you run with things that are a good, and you have the permission to do, and then what are the things that person really wants to be involved in.
Jared, you and Ren had a good enough relationship where he could say, "Hey, no. In the future, I want to be involved with that." But looking back, would you have said, if you were consulting your previous self, would you have said, "Hey, take a moment to actually ask him, hey, how specific do you want to get into these details? What are the things you care about most?" How would you have handled that differently if you could consult that version of yourself?
I think certainly it was it happened early enough with Ren and I that we had developed a relationship and friendship for 10 years. He was a new AD at Rogers State. He was going through the same thing I was without we didn't have a ton of mentors and people like that, ADs that we could tap into. So we were kind of became each other's trusted, friends and resource going through those things. And so I do say, I think anytime you step into a new role, trying to understand on both sides, trying to get to that common ground as soon as possible. Travis Wyckoff's a good friend of mine, and Travis put me through an exercise this last year of having my own leadership owner's manual. So a series of really good questions that I go back to every year and kind of refine, but I share that with my executive team now. And so I encourage them too, like with new hires, it's helpful for people to know, hey, here's the thing, here's my values, here's the way I like to be communicated with, here's things that frustrate me. And it's just a really good tool to hopefully avoid some of those hiccups in those first couple of months when you're working with a new team or a new staff member.
Is it ever too early to start building that? I love that concept of the leader's owner's manual. Is it ever too early?
No, I encourage our staff here. Like, I think regardless, even if you're in your first job, to really, because it's really a more reflective process of how you operate. And even if we had a new employee that had that and shared it with me, I think it definitely opens up just some insight into, what are during stressful situations. Maybe I normally approach things this way, and maybe I should readjust course on how I engage here. But I just think it gives a ton of insight. So I've kind of encouraged that with our entire staff to think through that, because it's been super helpful for me. And I think my staff would say it definitely has opened their eyes on the front end, just kind of expectations and things that help us move quicker and faster.
Okay, Jamie. So let's get into the promise that we made. Take what Jared was just talking about. I assume that's part of it, right? That's part of working well with a president is learning what his or her owner manual is, right? And learning the way he or she likes to communicate, and what color tile he likes to or she likes to is interested in. How have you? What else would you add to that? Would you agree that's part of it? And then what other aspects would you add to learning how to get your president to eat right out of your hand and do exactly what you want him to do?
Well, I know our president we have a very great relationship. I would say if there's a president and an AD that were ever meant to be together, it's us. We're all about 99% of the time, we're always on the same page with decision making. But there's a lot of observation involved. I mean, one thing I didn't do was go in right away thinking I knew everything. We're very blessed here at GCU. There's just brilliant people around this campus. And so I went in and approached it with a lot of humility. I sat into the leadership meetings with the university executives that I wasn't a part of before, and I listened. I saw how he operated, how he related to his executive staff, how they related with him, the kind of information they presented to him. I did not go in right away with my PowerPoint presentation at every meeting ready to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Everybody move out of the way. Jamie's here. I'm going to show you exactly how this is done.
So it takes a lot of humility to know that you don't know everything. And I had been here for 4 years, but not in that role. So a lot of learning, a lot of support from other executives around campus who knew our president's style very well. And a lot of people stepped up, honestly, to help. Great thing is we were able to build a lot of strong relationships within athletics with people all around campus. And because of that foundation of having that relationship, everyone stepped in when I was named interim and said, hey, here's some thoughts. Hey, let's go to lunch. I'll let you know kind of the things that President Mueller might want to see. So going in humbly, first of all, and getting to understand how they operate and think and like to be approached. But secondly, you still have to produce results, and you have to produce results. And for us at the time, that was when our conference was really kind of on the edge of potentially falling apart. And so I knew that the priority for us was, okay, we got to work together to figure out how to really stabilize our conference. And very fortunately, going back to relationships, had a really great relationship with Ryan Ivey, who is now at Louisiana Tech. But we were connected somehow, and we thought there was some potential with our conferences for them to join our conference at the time, and brought that to our president. And 6 months later, we have 4 new members in our conference. So you got to produce results, and that was really where I think it was that point where he really felt like he knew that he could trust that I would produce for him.
Let's do a hypothetical. Let's say somebody's listening to this, and maybe they're an AD, maybe they're a number 2 associate, or maybe they're new in their role in general. But let's say they hear you talk, Jamie, and they're like, "Well, that's great. You and your boss are on the same page 99% of the time. That must be nice." That's not my situation. I've got a hard relationship with my boss. I don't know if she likes me, or I don't know if he likes me. I'm still trying to prove myself. We're in the middle of something that I don't have the expertise in, but I know I need to develop a better relationship with either my president or maybe even my AD. How would you advise somebody? This is really for either one of you, but what advice would you give that person that was in that situation?
I think we've all probably been through that situation or a period of time in that situation. And the bottom line is you are not the boss. So you have to adapt to your boss.
Right.
They're in that chair. We don't know what situation they're in. You don't know, you don't know if they're actually completely supportive of you, but someone above them is not. So give them reason. You got to put your head down. You got to work. You got to produce results, and you got to be as humble as can be. And if it's still not moving, you got to move along because you're not the boss. So.
Jared, would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I do think it's, if I could rewind and probably really dig into this aspect of leadership earlier, I probably saved myself some headache. But Jamie's right. Like, your job is to ultimately figure out the rules of the game. So like, I view everything we do in our jobs is like a board game that has rules, and the boss sets the rules. And so you can either figure out how to play the game and try to win, or you can put your head down and say, I don't agree with that. And so I'm just going to do it my way. And it's ultimately going to create a loss or negative consequences on the flip side. And so I think figuring out, just realizing that your job is to take the initiative to figure that out. Their job's not to meet you. You got to meet them where they're at. I would also say too, just, I think as a leader, and certainly even with, we've got a new president, I think opportunities to get to know people away from the heat of the battle and work, like trust and relationships and those things need to be forged in times that aren't just every time there's some major, major fire that you've got to go address. Like, you need to establish some opportunities to get to know people so that when you do go to battle, like, there's already a level and somewhat of a foundation of, I know this person and we're going to get through this together. And so I encourage people too. I think it's hard as business, and certainly here at North Texas, the bigger your organization gets, that personal touch can be difficult, but finding meaningful ways to pull the team together where it's not work all the time and there is an opportunity to just relax, take a breath, and enjoy some fellowship. I think those things are equally important, especially, even with a president, you need to figure out times to create that space that's not always around something that's work related.
And I would also add, probably take advantage of the moments. You really got to take advantage of those moments where, whether it's a trip somewhere, a long car ride somewhere, an opportunity to do something that's outside of it. You might not be able to, particularly if it's with your boss, you might not be able to schedule that. You might not have the control to be able to make that happen. But when the opportunity does present itself, you really got to see that as a really crucial opportunity. I call it it's the boss employee squeeze, where the boss, when I like to ask people, if you had to choose between relationships and results, what does your boss want from you? Well, Jamie, you've said it a few times. Your boss wants results. I'm happy to have a relationship with you, but it will be a better relationship if you give me results. When you flip it around, what does the employee want from the boss? Oftentimes the employee wants relationship, right? We all want to have that kind of relationship, Jamie, that you talked about, that you have with your boss. Jared, sounds like that you're even developing with your boss, but that's not always easy. It really does start with the results. Can you produce some results in the role that you're in? You both have produced results, and it's got you into the role that you're in now. Let's talk real quickly about your own personal habits. What are the things that you feel like sometimes maybe people overlook, or the daily habits, the maybe morning habits, the way that you set yourself up to be as proficient in your job as you are? Either one of you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. For me, our jobs, they're not typical jobs. They're not 9 to 5. They're not 8 to 5. They're really, you're on all day, all weekend. There's really not a break. I think Jared and I had this discussion not that long ago, how you just don't get a break. So for our department, we want to have fun at work. You're going to be at work all the time, so you want people to enjoy coming into work, even at the most stressful time. So it's really, there's no work-life balance in athletics. So we try to create it within just this environment, this culture of a family culture, and so that people enjoy it. And it has to be a part of, it's just part of your life. Like, your life becomes your job. So, we have fun together. We try to do things outside of work. We try to have these moments of, where our families get together. We keep a very family-oriented environment because you have to, or else you don't see your family. So it's really for us merging our family and our work, and just a really, a culture where we feel like we still always enjoy coming to work, no matter how stressful it is.
And I assume your husband's got to be in on that, Jamie. I mean, he has to say, "Hey, I'm in."
Yeah, and fortunately, he's a former athlete, and so he understands. But, to your point, the spouses make such a difference, and that's something I should add in. We include the families in everything, even in our workplace. You will at times see little kids running around here, and there's times when I say, "Hey, you guys, you work from home. If your kids are sick, work from home. If you don't have to come in today, don't." So just really also being mindful of there's families involved, and you want people to, again, love being here. And we've been able to retain people because of that.
It's great. Jared, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, and Jamie's alluded to it, I early in my career before I had kids, you try to just say, hey, I'm going to break at lunch to go work out or to go do this thing that I kind of need to recharge. And you find quickly in this business, like you're not like you think you're going to get away for lunch, and something's going to always push in. So I'm rigid with my routine to the point that my wife will tell me, listen, you can sleep in on the weekend, but I get up at 5:30 every morning. I work out. I spend time. I try to spend the first few minutes and hour of my day either reading. So kind of it's my chance to like self-reflect and learn and grow. I'm fortunate. I've got a group of peers and friends in the business that we're on a text thread, and so like periodically, you've got that's sometimes work related, sometimes making fun of each other for something we're going through, but just to keep it light. I've got a group on the spiritual side, just trying to think through, my faith and how do you squeeze that in too? Like I've got an awesome group of guys who every day, what one person sends out a devotional thought or just something to encourage. And, you just try to build in these moments where you create that stuff that you're able to kind of refill your tank too, that gets you through the day. And I would say too, for those who have young families, like I can remember early, I'm in a little different phase now because my kids are all older. 2 are out of high school, 1 left in high school. So like the pressures of having to create that time's a little different for me. But I can remember when they were little, like you're trying to build in vacations or around NACTA or around your conference meeting or the basketball tournament where everybody's in the car. Like you just have to create the windows of opportunity. Now, what that's meant though now is that my kids are spoiled in that I've been like, as a kid, if my dad had asked me, hey, y'all want to go to a pro game? I'd been like, yeah, let's go. My kid's first question, well, are we sitting in the suite?
Yeah, are we in a suite?
Oh my God. They're like, yeah, I might pass on this time. But, it's you do have to get creative and certainly blend the two, certainly when you have young families.
Let's end with this one. You guys have been fantastic, by the way. Thank you for opening up your life and sharing your wisdom with us. Give me like one piece of encouragement you would give to somebody that's listening going, it just hasn't happened for me. I mean, that's cool. You were in the number 2 spot and then you got to be in the number 1 role, which Jamie, I love what you said. Ultimately, you're like, you're not really in the number 1 role because you still have a president that you work for. Everybody in the end has a boss. But what would you say to that person that's just feeling kind of discouraged, going like, I don't think it's going to happen for me. I've been busting it. I've been giving it my all. I don't have a whole lot of personal life. I'm tired. I'm exhausted, and it's just not working out. What's the one piece of encouragement you would offer to that person that maybe is looking in the mirror with a little bit of discouragement today?
I mean, I think all of us, even in our roles we're in, you kind of reach that point, whether you're looking for a next step or not. Like, and certainly in college athletics, as much as it's changed, it's just it's got a number of challenges. But I think the best thing to do, I think a lot of times when you're young and you're trying to pursue those things aggressively, like you focus so much on the goal that you allow that to impact the day to day. And I think for me, even looking in opportunities that I thought, man, this is going to be the one. And then you get there and you don't, and the disappointment, but then you look back and had 1 or 2 of those things popped, I wouldn't have had the opportunity I really wanted, which was here at North Texas. And so I think while in the moment it can be frustrating, just put your head down, continue to do the work, lean into people like and Jamie and I both, have a connection. But, I think, Bob Bodine's been, I hear his voice all the time when I'm thinking through opportunities, in that, God's given us everybody we already need to get where we want to go. And so how do we create meaningful relationships? I don't have a big net, but I've got a small one with really deep relationships. And so how can I lean into my network of people to help encourage me through those times of disappointment, but who can help open those doors and be an advocate, there. And so I don't think enough people probably focus on really trying to dial into truly authentic, meaningful mentors and relationships that can kind of weather you through those times of disappointment.
Jamie?
I always say God's plans are always so much bigger and better than ours. And whatever, sometimes what you think you want isn't really what you want. And you don't know really what it is. And when you look back, you're where you are for a reason and a purpose, and you're there to serve a purpose. What I always have said when I've gone through situations where what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Is I really focus on the joy of serving others. And that's what we were meant to do. That's what we were created to do. But when you really focus on the joy of serving others, it makes you forget about why am I not here now? Why am I not here now? Again, there's a reason and a purpose. And so, my best advice is find the joy in serving others, and God will take you where you're supposed to be.
And hey, Jamie, the great thing about your advice, you can do that from whatever seat that you're in if you make that your aim. So that's fantastic. Thank you both. Really appreciate your wisdom, your insight. Hope that you guys will continue to follow along with the Leadership Playbook. Jared, thank you. Jamie, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Clay.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Jamie.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of the CALS Report. It's been a privilege to bring you an insightful conversation between Ryan Bradley, Clemson's Graham Neff, and Mississippi State's Zac Selmon, exploring leadership transitions, strategic innovation, and the future of college athletics. And a special thanks to Clay Scroggins, Jamie Boggs, and Jared Mosley for the rich perspective they shared in the Leadership Playbook on how to lead well, no matter your title. A huge thank you to all of our guests for their time and transparency, and to each of you for being part of the growing CALS community. Your commitment to leadership, growth, and service is what makes this space so special, and we're honored to walk alongside you in this journey. This episode of the CALS Report has been brought to you by Teamworks, the operating system for sports. With revenue sharing and regulatory change on the horizon, Teamworks helps college athletics departments streamline operation, manage student-athlete compensation, and operate with clarity and confidence. Learn more at teamworks.com. Be sure to subscribe to the CALS Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at the CALS Report, and on Twitter at 80 Symposium for more updates, clips, and conversations. For more information on CALS or connect with our team, visit www.80symposium.us. I'm Will Reese, and this has been the CALS Report. Until next time, stay connected and keep leading the way in college athletics.